Three, two, one, action.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Never, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back, because you won't be right back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back. I don't know if I nailed Matthew Lillard's just amazing delivery of that line, but you're definitely a good Randy. I feel like you would know all these rules to horror movies.
Yeah.
So this is You Had Me at Rewind, and we're traveling back to December 20th, 1996 to talk about Scream, the horror movie that resurrected the slasher genre, taught us the rules of surviving a scary movie, and made answering the phone genuinely terrifying again. Welcome to You Had Me at Rewind, the podcast where we revisit the 90s flicks that raised us. I'm super excited to bring in first-time guest to the podcast, Laron Chapman. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I could not be more excited to discuss the movie that we're going to do. That's the subject of this podcast for today.
Right.
I think you have picked the ultimate Scream fan on the planet. If there's one that's a bigger fan of Scream than me, then I have not met that person. So
This episode was just made for you. It was just in the stars that this was going to happen.
absolutely.
So I like your bio line on your Instagram profile. I totally stole it. You label yourself a filmmaker, screenwriter, film critic, podcaster, occasional actor, and cinema junkie. Anything else? That's lots of things.
That is a lot of things, yeah. And it's kind of feels like a new thing now where like a film critic could also be a filmmaker, but we're seeing that happen a lot more.
Mhm.
And I think that my love of film kind of started first being a film critic, someone who just consumed it and wanted to talk about it all the time. And then that morphed into like, hey, why don't I make a movie? Since I talk so much crap about them, let me just see if I could take a stab at it myself. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I definitely could you tell listeners just a little bit about yourself? I mean, I I got to know Caleb Masters. We had a mutual connection that kind of introduced. And I started listening to your all's podcast. So that's how. When I first actually met you in person, it was very weird because I was used to listening to you so much before actually meeting you for the first time when I was a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm based in Oklahoma City, and I went to OU, the University of Oklahoma. I got a film and video studies degree from there. I went there because my mom said that I wasted my entire childhood not playing outdoors, but standing in front of the TV and watching movies, consuming them. And she says, if you don't do something in the film industry, then I don't know what you're going to do, what your life is going to be, what the result of all this will be. And so, but she was right. I loved movies and I went there. I got a degree from there. And I have been working as a freelance filmmaker in Oklahoma City since 2012. The first film I ever worked on was August Osage County with Meryl Streep, Julia Roberts, and a whole list of other Oscar winning actors. And so I was kind of fed to the wolves, if you will, with that being like just, so many riches, in that one experience right there. And have ever since been now working in various capacities on film sets in Oklahoma City, TV, commercials, all different forms of it. And simultaneously have a podcast with, as you mentioned, Caleb Masters. And I've written and directed my own film called You People in 2017. And so I have done a little bit of every aspect of filmmaking as kind of in my bio there. I've acted a little bit. I don't normally advertise it. That's why I put the word occasional actor. I'm not looking to be hired, but a lot of my friends find roles that they think are perfect for my sensibilities. And so sometimes I get thrown into movies as the comedic relief, if you will. So, but yes, just somebody who lives and breathes movies and just loves learning about them in every capacity, from the business side to the creative side and to the film analysis side of it. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I, for some reason I didn't know you graduated from OU. So when you were there, was the Gaylord building as it is now? Was it there when you were a student?
It was there, yes, it was
Yeah.
there. Mm, and I actually got a scholarship to OU as a journalist first, and that's
Okay.
interesting. That was kind of my avenue into college, but I knew that I was there to make movies, and so I wound up getting a degree not in journalism, even though I did write for the student paper as the requisite film critic for the OU Daily for 3 years. So
Okay, so I worked at OU for a time. So since you were the writer for that area, I probably didn't have to mess with you too much. So I had to deal with some annoying OU daily reporters at my time there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's funny. Yeah, I just mentioned that because I was a digital film major at Baylor.
Oh wow, yeah,
Our building was not all that great. Love the place, but and the first time I walked into Gaylord, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is this is definitely would have been if I was a student at the time." I didn't even think about. I was lived in Texas, always lived there. Didn't even think about OU. It wasn't ever on my radar. But if I had walked into that building, I would have been in
and
automatically.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, if you can't see, I mean, you're listening to this. We might throw some clips up here, but Laron has a Scream hat on, has an amazing Ghostface background, a shirt. I mean, I love it. You're decked out for this.
Yeah.
Uh, just if people aren't aware of this movie, just a little overview. Scream follows a group of high school students in the quiet town of Woodsboro who become the targets of a mass killer, all while openly discussing the cliches and rules of horror movies as they unfold in real time. Directed by horror legend Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, Scream blends genuine scares with razor-sharp meta humor, reinventing the slasher film for a new generation. It was funny, scary, self-aware, and somehow still shocking. A movie that knew exactly what we expected and then weaponized it against us. So I kind of listening to some podcasts here and there, I feel like I've heard you talk about Scream even when the podcast wasn't about Scream, or or
Yeah, it comes
or
up
the
a
horror.
lot.
Yeah, it comes up a lot. So I was excited because I knew you'd be perfect for this. So I guess first I'll ask you, when did you first see Scream, and then maybe why you latched onto it? Did you see it when it first came out?
So 1996, I just celebrated a birthday about a week and a half ago, so I'm 36 now, and the movies that franchise is kind of celebrating 30 years of existence. So I was 6 years old when Scream came out. Did not go to the movie theater to go see it, no, but I did watch it on VHS. I think actually not the year it came out, but 1997 on VHS. And at this time, Scream 1 and 2 had both released. And so I kind of watched them consecutively, like back to back. And so, um, and I think it was the perfect gateway. I still think it is the perfect gateway for people who maybe don't traditionally watch horror movies, but kind of, because it has a playfulness to it. And I think that it kind of is a nice gateway in terms of like introducing you to all of the different genre tropes, if you will. And so,
Hmm.
and it's intense, but it's not as intense as say like your Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that. There's some levity there that I think makes it a little bit more palatable for people who can handle a little bit of suspense, a little bit of gore, but there's also a lot of humor attached to
Y-
it. So
Yeah, yeah, it's very approachable. So I am older than you, but I was in high school when this came out, so I was a freshman in high school,
yeah,
and I mean, I I know I've said before, I lived when it came to movies and entertainment. I lived in a strict household, so I
yeah,
know I didn't go see this in the theater,
yeah.
but I feel like I probably didn't truly like sit down and watch it from start to finish until college, but I feel like I had already seen it in that realm just because once again, really that age in high school is when horror movies like this really start kind of piquing your interest, so to speak. But also, I mean, especially seeing I mean, I'm sure the actors were much older than high school age when they filmed this, but like, it's even though it's a horror movie, there are a lot of teen movies like Can't Hardly Wait and She's All That and all that it's kind of the same actor class, sort of, and so I feel like even though I didn't see this in the theater, it was probably a movie playing at a friend's house or a
Hmm.
party even, or, so it's like, I mean, the opening scene, I feel like I probably saw many times before I actually saw the movie. So yeah, it was definitely definitely a
Yeah.
film that like broke the conversation. And I might be wrong. I'm not a super horror expert, but I feel like probably like every genre kind of has ebbs and flows and stuff. And I feel like maybe horror before this time was a little down, and this kind of launched it back up again.
That is correct. Yeah, it was definitely like basically, and they were in horror movies weren't held in a high regard by critics. They were kind of traditionally maligned by critics, actually, like as kind of like low class, cinema, like what was like B movies and what have you. So it's really interesting how like Wes Craven, even he himself was about to kind of pivot away from it because it seemed as though the conversation around these movies and the interest in these movies had kind of waned over time. And so it's kind of brilliant that Scream became this kind of like resurgence for the genre where all of a sudden now, because critics actually really loved this franchise. They were I remember distinctly watching Ebert and Roper, doing their two thumbs up show at the time, like talking about this is a smart horror movie, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say, like, and that's why I think it's the perfect gateway for that because I think it respects the legacy of the horror movies that came before it and the genre itself, and it also has a tongue in cheek approach where Wes Craven himself is like literally skewering and poking fun of his own movies that he's made, and I found that to be kind of kind of bold and daring for the time, so.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely it being so tongue in cheek, and I would say that maybe that makes this rewatchable, and why probably people definitely had come to the genre. Kind of unlike some. I mean, it definitely relies on jump scares mainly. I would say to get a lot of the intensity, and some of the killing scenes are, especially at the opening. They're definitely brutal, but like this is kind of a movie, and I say this in a good way that like after you see it once, it's pretty fun, even more fun to watch the second time because it's really not like watching this. I wasn't scared when watching this
Right.
again this time versus like something like The Exorcist, where I think if you revisit it, it still
Yeah.
creeps me out to this day. But that's not a knock on this film. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're right. A 6-year-old me obviously was horrified, terrified
Well, yeah, yeah.
because well, because we got to think too. This Scream predates the torture porn aspect of horror films when we get
Yeah.
to like your Saws and your Hostel, because a lot of things have changed in that horror landscape post Scream. But prior to, we really just had like your Friday the 13th or your Nightmare on Elm Street, like so it was really just kind of like this new age of horror movies was just kind of coming in, like it is is having an evolution of sorts. And so yeah, I think that 6-year-old me watching this for the first time, because I probably at that point had only seen maybe The Lion King, like you know what I mean? Like it just like watching Drew Barrymore get brutalized in that opening scene is was definitely traumatizing, but in a weird way. uh it was so exhilarating of an experience, even though I was terrified as a kid. I still wanted to keep watching, and it does kind of become this like this roller coaster, if you will, where I kind of understood why people like these kinds of movies. And I think the reason being is like you're essentially like you're going through this same fears and suspense and kind of terror that the characters are without any of the consequences that they face, so you're in a safe space but you still get to have that rush that they're having in that regard. And so it kind of is, yeah, it's kind of and I get that it's not for everyone. Not everyone loves horror movies. It's definitely like your thing or not. But for people who get it or like it, I would say that's why we're not just crazy psychopaths. I think it is actually like a human response to like just that exhilarating rush you get from watching something that's intense like that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want you to undersell Lion King and the and
Well, that
how
was
Scar,
traumatizing too.
Scar being pretty frightening in his own right.
Yeah, for sure,
And
for
the
sure.
height that I even remember watching Lion King with Hayden, my youngest, like I mean, a couple of years ago. But you know, those hyenas still invoke
Yeah.
fear in little
Yeah,
kids.
Disney was definitely putting children through the ringer in the '90s for sure, like, with yeah, like, having us process horrible things like death and things like that, like, especially of a parent, so, yeah, I still remember seeing that in theaters too and just sobbing, but, like, as a kid, like, so, but yeah, definitely, I will say it still didn't prepare me quite quite for what Scream did for me probably 2 or 3 years after that experience, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, it's been talked about a lot now. But if somebody was visiting this film for the first time, obviously with Drew Barrymore, you know, being in the opening of it, even though Drew Barrymore very famous then, I think is on a whole different level now. And
yeah,
I don't think people understood like she was still doing stuff, but this was almost kind of a resurgence of what in a way. And definitely, you know, they did the kind of psycho thing. Like she, like promotion wise, she was on all the posters and all the things, and they really did kind of a bait and switch of, you know, if they were selling the movie, you know, with Drew Barrymore. I mean, she was definitely the more recognizable of the
of
names
the
at
stars
that
for
time.
sure
Yeah,
at
at
that
that
time, yeah.
time, and so you know, still feel like people watching that for the first time had a sense that maybe she was going to get out, or that she was going to
Yeah,
be the character that we followed the whole time.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It was a clever marketing kind of ploy, because she originally wanted to or read to be for the character of Sydney Prescott, and so the Nev Campbell character, and, they really want because she was such a star at the time, and they wanted to sell the movie, and she was very hell-bent on the idea. She's like, "I really just wanna play the character in the opening scene." She's like and they thought, "Huh, that's an idea. What if we kind of, manufacture this idea that she's the star of the movie and then, pull the rug from them in the first 10 minutes of the movie, harkening back to what they did with Janet Leigh and Psycho that kind of plays into the meta-ness of it all, but I like that that was an accident. That wasn't by design. It just kind of happened, by circumstance, yeah.
Yeah. And also kind of what's I think that they get right with this film as well. And it's so on my podcast we covered the 50 best rom-coms, and a lot of those rom-coms usually involved high school or teenagers, and it was fun to watch movies in different genre, like teen movies, quote unquote teen movies. And similar to this one, that like you know, all it's like all the feelings and how people react at that age all stay the same. It's just the fashion and clothes and the music that's different, you
Yeah,
know? And
yeah,
I do like in this movie that like you know, Ghostface is like really sloppy in lots of ways that I
yeah,
think a high schooler would. I also think that like the way almost the even though something obviously serious is going around in this community, how, you know, if there's a curfew, how they just kind of, you know, oh whatever, and you know
yeah.
how there totally would be. Now I hope this doesn't happen, but if this happened, there would totally be the person that dressed up as Ghostface and would run through the halls of the high school. Like there's elements of that that I think are, you know, obviously this is a movie, but I do feel like it gets that kind of right of like these kids are really not taking this as serious as they should.
Right, they're pretty sloppy. It's kind of funny, like, yeah, I exposed this franchise to, my spouse maybe 3 or 4 years ago, because they didn't know the difference between Scary Movie, the parody series, and this. They're like, "Oh, I thought
Right.
they were all the same thing," and it's like, "No, no, no, no. No, we have to correct this wrong right away," and so we watched the entire series over the course of a week or so, and, it's I get it now, and now I get all the references, and I see that this was kind of a play on all of those things, and you're right, Ghostface is so silly as a as a character in general, like, they're normally very sloppy, they always fall down, it's not like Michael where you just know that you either have to outrun this person or it's done, like, whereas with Ghostface, there's always a chance you can survive this scenario because they're not as sophisticated as some of the other killers, and I think that's also by design, kind of plays into the tongue in cheek aspect of the Ghostface killer, like, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think also what kind of makes this fun, more fun, like for her horror movie for sure. Like, so I'm still, so Hallie's my oldest. She's a freshman in high school right now, and Hayden's in fourth grade. And I've always Hallie. She's a little bit with entertainment. She can take the stuff, gore and whatever. Hayden's kind of our scaredy cat, and she would say that. That's not making fun of her. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
but I still can't. There's something about the horror movie genre I just can't really watch with Hallie. I just feel like that's like a rite of passage with like her friends and stuff like that. But all that to say, like, because I would actually think she would really like this movie, but I was like, I don't know. There's something kind of weird. I don't know why a daddy daughter sitting down to watch Scream or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was telling her about this movie, and I was kind of telling her, I was like, well, actually, part of the fun of this is that, it does a good job of playing with like you guessing like who it is, and it kind of sets up how it could be, with people. And she was like, kind of like Scooby Doo. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, it's a lot like Scooby Doo.
I've described it as that, it's Scooby Doo for adults. Yeah, it's it's an R-rated Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
yeah,
oh, I didn't think about this, but didn't Matthew Lillard, he played
he plays Shaggy, so that's probably
Shaggy?
why I
Yeah.
got the role, to be honest. It was an audition long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. So I really like that a lot. Also, anything else about the plot that you like about this movie?
I think in general, when I ask people, they're like, "Why is it Scream for you? Why Scream? Why of all the horror movies?" Because I love all kinds of horror movies in general, but Scream is just my favorite franchise. And they're like, "Why is that your favorite?" And I think it's because um a couple of things. One, because of course, like it's never the same person. That's always fascinating. That's interesting. Like whereas it's not like Michael or Jason, it's always the same person chasing this group of people or the same person. And this time it's always like the who done it aspect of it, the Agatha Christie aspect of it, the like it involves the audience being a little bit more having a little bit more active viewership where they get to play into the like, well, I wonder if it's this person or that person, where so it allows you to kind of be kind of into the mechanics of the plotting of everything and question people and do all that. And I think that just provides for a lot more entertainment value, than a lot of other horror movies probably provide.
Yeah, yeah. And if people didn't know, this movie has just very who's who of '90s popular actors at the time. I mean, it's a stacked cast. I won't go through all of them, but are there any standouts that you like a lot from this movie?
From this particular one, I mean, I think, it's probably my favorite Matthew Lillard performance ever, and I think he has some good ones in his filmography, but, and, I think honestly I feel like, I mean, Nev Campbell, it's so cool that she's been able to be a part of this because that's something you don't hear about. Like with where like Jamie Lee Curtis is obviously one
Hmm.
great example, but in general, these people's lives go off in different directions, their careers go in different directions, and they don't really want to revert back to this sort of thing where this is the thing another thing about Scream's enduring legacy is that it just keeps going because these people keep coming back to it, and they do have an affection for these characters in this world. But I'd say the standout for me, even when people ask me my favorite, final girl, I get in trouble for saying Nev Campbell and not Jamie Lee Curtis, but I think it's just because of the continuity that this franchise has versus we didn't have to go to space or go a different timeline and all these different things. It's like it's the one franchise that's it just consistently the same core group of characters that they've fleshed out so well in this first one. And Neb Campbell, it's been really great to see this character evolve over the course of this process. And we got Scream 7 coming next month, and she's gonna be a mom now. So I'm just really excited to see this aspect of that same character over the course of 30 years, which is something you just don't really see in television or in movies very often, so.
Yeah. Now, you might pull my movie fan card for me here because so I know I've definitely seen Scream 1 through 3. I have one of my best friends from college loved this franchise, and during on Halloween Day, this shows our age, but we would play horror movies throughout the whole day. So if you were in class and you came back and the movie was ending, it was your duty to like switch it out or whatever. So Scream 1 through 3 was definitely on the rotation. It'd be so much easier now with streaming now. Just make a playlist and let it go. But
Yeah.
so I honestly kind of lost where the franchise went like
On there.
after. So is and I know some people have come and go. Has she been on all the movies? And I know there was a reboot of sorts.
The only character who has been in every single movie is Courtney Cox, which is funny
Oh,
because
okay.
the Gail Weathers character, she's been in every single one. Nev Campbell would have been in all 7 up to this point. There was a pay dispute with the 6th one, the one that's in New
Okay.
York City, whereas the first and only one that she was not in, and she's still there referenced, by the other characters, but she's not the focus of it, and so they had to kind of remove that element from the script. But it did allow, I'd say, for a deep fleshing out of the new characters that they established in 5 to have more screen time for us to get to know them. And I do think the film was it sounds blasphemous to say, was kind of for the better for it in that sense, so that we could actually, give these characters some meaty things to do and not be the B plot to Nev Campbell all the time. And so, but yes, so Nev Campbell has been in all but the 6th one that was in New York City. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, like you, I definitely like Matthew Lillard in this film. I've always liked him, but I mean, he just I can see how some people would say like over the top, but there always seems to be like this just like dude bro guy in these groups
Yeah.
that are like that just like if there's space, they're gonna take up all of it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's his character, and he does it in such a excellent way. So, and
Right.
I haven't seen Skeet Ulrich in tons of things,
Yeah.
but yeah, but he came back too, right? In the
Comes back in some capacity in the later.
okay,
I don't want to
okay,
spoil anything for you, but if you haven't seen 4 through 7, or 4 through 6 at this point, 6 is
okay.
7 is, but yeah, they do
Is
something clever with that character in the later series, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't mean to make this of like Nathan question, asking questions about the franchise, but is Jamie Kennedy in like the newer films too?
Um, so so Jamie Kennedy in the 2nd one, and that's one of the most horrific, like, one that kinda makes fans very angry, was like, he meets his
Yeah,
demise in the 2nd one in a horrific way. And so, which was they kinda, for a long time, kind of handicapped the franchise with that, because he was the wealth of knowledge for all of
right.
them.
Yeah,
He had all the film knowledge about how to escape all these scenarios. So they do create a character, like a surrogate character, that becomes the Randy Meeks, equivalent of that. And it is someone related to him, so
yeah,
that they it's a nice play on that. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Watching this is definitely. I mean, I remember. See, it's been long enough that I couldn't
Yeah.
remember. But this movie definitely made me. I know I saw this many times. The other ones not so much, and so it definitely made me. Yeah, I should. I don't know when I'd find the time to sit down and have a
Yeah.
screen marathon, but
Next
it would be a lot of
October,
fun.
do that. I do it every year. Every October, I rewatch I rewatch them, like,
Uh,
for Halloween, spooky season,
Yeah,
or rewatch. So
yeah, Jamie Kennedy is definitely. I mean, he's still, even though a big part of this movie, I knew he was in this movie. There's still something about when he pops up. It's like, I mean, that feels more '90s to me than almost anything, just because, like, uh, a lot of people now wouldn't know who that was, but I mean, he had
right,
definitely a moment during that
the
that
presence there,
time.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, had his own show. I feel like he like dressed up as like different characters and like
Mhm.
messed with people, kind of like a blooper
Yeah,
show, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so any we kind of talked about the opening phone call scene. Are there any other significant scenes that are your favorites or like lines of dialogue that you like?
I definitely feel like you have to mention the Randy, like we did it at the top of the show. I feel like the opening, that kind of, established very plainly for the audience, like, "Oh, okay, now we're engaged and we're gonna be following these rules, moving forward." So when he establishes what those 3 rules are, I feel like that was a very important, a very telling moment for people, and who realize, "Okay, now I really see what what Kevin Williamson, the writer's doing now is he's literally like telling us to like play by the rules of this. And so now every movie is kind of I guess you'd say rated or judged by how well they adhere to those rules in each movie, you know? And so it does get kind of fun as the franchise continues because 2 was about sequels. It kind of satirizes, you know, how sequels aren't as good as the first one, and which is kind of amusing, you know, because people say that all the time. And as they get further into it, like reboots and remakes and requels, things that we're seeing an influx of for every kind of IP, you know, that exists. And they start, you know, having commentary about that. So these movies kind of become just a really fun commentary on the evolution of media and film and genre at large. And so I think that's why they've been able also to endure for so long, because it's constantly evolving, that's constantly changing. So
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a cheat to probably for me like just to say the party scene because it's pretty much the third act of the whole movie. But
yeah,
I always kind of I've always liked films that settle into one space and like from the filmmaker side, I like the challenge, you know, of making the location interesting and
yeah,
going without like taking the viewers like in a completely different, you know, place or whatever. You know, like during this party scene, we're not like cutting back to maybe the parents of these
yeah.
kids or that sort of thing. And so I just, I almost kind of forgot, like, oh yeah, like when the party scene started, and I knew there was still quite a bit of time left in the movie. I was like, oh yeah, I forget that we
We've
sit
been
in
here
this.
for a long time.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, and that even the movie ends, you know,
yep,
with Gail doing her newscast at the very end, you know. So
yeah.
I
It's
just
a
want to
huge
say,
set piece.
yeah, kudos to her to still be able to pull that off. Oh, what's the name of her the camera guy who gets killed? But
Maybe.
like, yeah, do you think that you know the other crew that came out? Do you? They were like, I don't know. I would have been a little like, I don't know if I want to be stuck
Yeah,
to Gale.
yeah, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's a yeah, and I agree with you about the set piece. It is fun, and it's kind of a rare one in all of the other ones because they do jump around to different locations. Like the second one's in college, and this one, the third one's in the Hollywood studio lot in L.A. You know, like so, it is kind of interesting that Scream is essentially, you know, most of the kills and all of the mayhem and stuff happens in that last 35-40 minute stretch at the home. And so you're right. It's a good economical use of that space, you know, but yeah, so many things happen in set pieces and subplots happen just in that one location. So it is a good testament to how well Wes and Kevin were able to, you know, create suspense in that one location.
Yeah. And I meant to touch a little bit, just even the ghost face costume or whatever like that. I mean, I feel like this, I mean, if you even doubted this movie's influence, I mean, still Halloween this past year when we were going trick or treating, you're going to see at least one or two Ghostface costumes like on the streets and whatever. And once again, kind of playing into that like high school aspect that we talked about, that I think it adds, you know, that definitely it was a simple thing, but it was really a ingenious thing to do of like making this costume like something that anybody could just get, you know, and it really adds to that tension of, you know, the
Yeah.
killer really could be anyone.
It's the simplicity of it. Yeah, it's not because they had different iterations, like, they had, like first it was gonna be like a monster face, like a really
Uh-huh.
corny, like, really, like, Halloween-y type, and they, like when they found this very simple kinda generic white ghost face, they were like, "You know, there's something creepy about how you just" you know, like, it could be anybody. It could be anybody. Like, you put a werewolf face on it, and you kind of the tension's kind of deflated, but you
Yeah.
put that on, and someone's just standing there ominously, and it's expressionless, you know, it's very like, "Huh, I wonder what's going on back there," you know, like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I would actually say it's maybe probably even more frightening than the films of just like you're just walking Halloween street and you see someone in a ghost face costume just because it's that just a normal person. Like there's something almost inherently versus like if somebody was dressed up as Freddy Krueger,
Yes.
you're like, oh, that's supernatural. But like even like when you're walking and you see someone, you're just like, I don't know. Even this movie really kind of like plugged that into you of like, oh,
Yeah.
I need to be cautious of that person. So
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I really liked. We talked about how this movie balanced comedy and tension, but I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street. I wasn't like, are you a Wes Craven, junkie? Like, have you seen the other
I
stuff that he's done?
I have seen virtually everything he's made. Yes. Scream still is obviously my favorite of everything he's made, or created in that way. But yes, I've watched the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I've seen, some of his earlier work that predates this too, and some of the later work that came after it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What I liked about this movie too, and I think why it's kind of inviting, a lot more inviting in a lot of ways, is that it's a very bright film for a
Yeah.
horror movie,
Yeah.
and I think that really adds a lot to it, and probably is something you hadn't seen before.
Right, you're right, because you think of Nightmare on Elm Street, and you're literally in a dreamscape, and there's shadows, and there's a certain texture to it that you're right. I think it's because Scream is so grounded in what appears to be obviously some kind of heightened version of reality, but it's grounded enough where you can see like, okay, I these feel like real people in a scenario that's a little ridiculous, but at least there's enough that you can suspend belief because there's enough elements there that are relatable to real life, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I did want to kind of touch a little bit. Now you could actually. I haven't seen the newer films, but obviously, like trauma plays a big part of this, and Sydney's character and what happened to her mom. Um, do the newer films kind of maybe treat this with like I don't want to say more like more of a serious tone, but I'm watching this going like I just know people today would treat Sydney's scenario probably a lot better than they do in this film because I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, lay off this poor girl. Like,
This poor
her,
woman, she literally just a teenage girl, her mother was murdered, and, she has this false perception of what kind of life she lived before that, and so, yeah, they would have a lot more empathy. I feel like we would be in a lot more of a understanding of that, and Sid would be a more sympathetic character, and everybody wouldn't be wanting to go after and try and, like, slice her up. It just seems like, what did she do to any of you? Like,
any of it, yeah. Just throughout this whole watching, I was like, that's all. Like, if I was writing down notes, I mean, I do it on my phone, but if I would keep writing down, poor Sydney, poor Sydney. I just
or
feel for her this whole time.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what did she do to deserve all these horrible people
Yeah,
around her?
everyone's got a bone to pick with Sydney, and I'm like, "Guys, you guys I think you're focusing on the wrong issue. The root issue here is
Yeah,
something a
yeah.
lot deeper than this." Yeah, but
Yeah, but also, I mean, as much as there's like lightness to it, I mean, the ending of this and the reveal of who Ghostface is it gets really to me very dark in their
yeah.
dialogue with between each other and stuff like that.
I think that's why these work too, is also that, as you mentioned, we're talking about the tone of it, and it strikes the right balance because, like, the opening scene obviously sets that tone. It's like, okay, innocent girl on the phone talking to some weird guy on the phone. Like it's like this is the scenario you may have encountered. You might have talked, especially in the '90s. You would have answered the phone for some rando that would just calls you, and you might talk to him. You're not assuming that this person's stalking you. You might now, like, but, um, and I think, yeah, I actually think Scream is responsible for why Gen Z does not like getting on the phone, like talking on the phone. Like, they have anxiety about answering phone calls. I think Scream is partially to blame for that creation. But I do think that they find the right balance of biting humor, like biting social commentary, a kind of cheekiness with the right ratio of like real stakes and real intensity and the presence of violence where you can be invested in the deaths. They actually mean something. You care about what happens to individual people. and so whereas in previous movies before, you're like, oh, they're all dumb teenagers, they're doing stupid things, they're getting hacked off, and there's no like emotional stakes. So they do a really good job of making these characters like all the characters in really all of these movies, but especially this establishing first film. Um, have actual layers to them, where we care or involved with them. And and as you mentioned, with the presence of trauma and survival, that kind of aspect that Sydney represents, kind of being the survivor in many ways. Like you're having a real dialogue, about how people process grief and how they process traumatic events like this. And you get to see that evolution as these characters continue to deal with this same conflict over and over again. And what it's like to lose another friend, or why you won't even engage in a new love affair or a relationship because you're afraid they might get hurt by some other psycho that's going to try and use it to exploit you even further. So they get into some things that you wouldn't expect to be deeper in something like this, especially for the time, so.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mentioned Jamie Kennedy already, but I always pose this question to my guests with this series. But to you, what is the most '90s thing about this movie?
The most 90s thing about this movie is probably, I mean, I would say like Skeet Ulrich's haircut is in particular, like the stringy long hair, like, that kind of like, that's something that you would see pretty regularly in all the 90s movies with the heartthrob that they would do that. But probably second to that is probably the oversaturated presence of video stores,
Yes.
like Blockbuster Video, like VHSs. I'm like, gosh, what a time, what a little time capsule. That's my favorite place in the world was Blockbuster when they were here. I never worked there, but I definitely applied several times in my youth. But yes, that I just love going into those spaces and you know, finding a new gym for that particular night. And so it's an experience that you just isn't the same when you're scrolling through streaming. It just doesn't have the same vibe to it. We have infinite possibilities of things we can choose from now, but it doesn't have that nostalgic, like, pool where it's just exciting to go into the place.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can't tell you how many like if I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stay about one more hour, and I'm trying to figure out like what to watch. And it's almost like having all the possibilities makes it like so much harder
Yeah.
to pick or to know
Yeah, it
you
feels
can like,
overwhelming. You almost say,
yeah,
"Oh, I've spent 2 hours scrolling, and now I don't even think I wanna watch a movie. I'm tired from looking from it." Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I guess I better get the rest for the next
Yeah,
day that I probably should get.
yeah.
But yeah, no, video stores for sure. It was funny that I had watched this one night. The next day, I'm at my office, and we have a pretty wide range of ages of people that I work with. But still, I'm typing at my computer, and I hear just outside my office some people talking, and I heard someone go, yeah, I worked at Blockbuster, and when I worked there, blah blah blah, and it went on, and I had to look and go, "Who is that?" Like, because you just,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would say we do. There's a lot of generations that like working at Blockbuster would not be part of their history at all.
No,
So,
but that yeah, like, well, because they have been gone for so long now.
yeah,
I still go to like, I'm still a huge advocate for physical media. I have a
yeah,
collection of probably 3,000 plus DVDs, Blu-rays, like a library of movies. And they're mostly alphabetical in the alphabetical order. They were, but as the years have gone on, and there's probably 2 years behind on reintegrating those new ones in there, but generally speaking, they are, but, because I feel like as soon as one streaming service goes or they do the little like, "Oh, now it's a bundle and you have to get both or you have to pay more," and all these things, I'm like, "You know what? I own all these movies. I don't have to do this," So, like,
yeah,
during COVID, when that happened, that was a huge, that made me a huge, I mean, the hottest ticket to come and say, "LaRon probably has these movies. Hey, do you have that?" They needed something to do, and I had all the entertainment I could ever need,
yeah.
so
Oh
yeah, I
yeah,
definitely still buy physical media, so I'll frequent the what still remains of the Blockbuster-esque kind of thing, I guess, is like your vintage stock or your, like,
yeah.
trailers. stores like that, and I do frequent those places and kind of try and find old movies for cheap. And it's nice. I like going there. I can spend hours in there just kind of perusing and come leave with like 15 $5 movies,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I live in Norman, and right near OU's campus, there was a family video that was hanging on for a long time, and it finally went out of business not too
yeah,
terribly long ago. But
yes,
anytime I drove by it, I was like, "Oh, it's still it's still making it." I'm not
yeah.
quite sure how it is, but yeah,
I lived long enough to see my film "You People" that I directed, uh, make it to Family Video in the new releases and was there. I got to go there because I they would give me an emails of all the locations that you could find your because I didn't even know. They told me where they would end
yeah.
up. And we had one up the street from my mom's house, and we went there, we took a photo with it. I was like, guys, I made it. I made it. My movie's in the new release section." And I asked them at the front desk, has anyone, I mean, don't break my heart, but has anyone, and they were like, 5 people have rented it. We
All
have a
right.
history. I was like, okay, 5 people I don't know showed up here and watched my film in a video store. So, and then I mean, it couldn't have been 6 months later when they went under and whatever. But I did live long enough to see that. So
Yeah.
that's a nice moment.
Well, and I say this in all sincerity. I mean, that's so cool because I mean, I think especially you're in this industry. I've been in the marketing world and stuff like that. You know how hard it is to break through with anything, but
Absolutely.
I mean, that is like those little moments. It keeps you like creating essentially. Just to
Absolutely.
when people like take in anything that you create that you don't know or that you've like actively pawned on them. It's
Yeah.
like it's from a creative standpoint so rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
'Cause those are
Yeah.
little things, like, at that period of time when you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna be a filmmaker, and here are the things that you think, "Oh, someone's gonna rent my movie one day. I'm gonna do an interview for on some publication promoting the movie. Maybe one day I'll win an Oscar," or like, these little things that you kind of dream up, and so, like, in small scale form, the first one obviously was seeing it in a video store. But those
Yeah.
are such a dying they were playing the violins on the Titanic, at that point in time. So, but
Yeah. I can't fail to mention also what stuck out to me besides like landlines. And as you kind of mentioned, the fact that, people are just answering phones and being willing to talk to
yeah,
someone they don't know, is also, I'm going to butcher her last name, but Rose McGowan, but who
uh
plays Tatum in here. Like
yeah,
her wardrobe in this movie is just so 90s to me.
it is. Oh yeah, the bright colors, the tie dye neon skirt,
Yeah.
very very 90s for sure.
So,
Uh, the
yes.
soundtracks too, like the music, for all these movies are in that era. And the just of the all the I mean, I don't know how many references there are to Tom Cruise at that point in time, like it was just, all the right moves. It's like, oh gosh. It was like, so yeah, I just found all that. It's still fun to go back, even in retrospect, to like go and see, even though they're like old references now, like it's still funny, in context. So
Yeah. Well, to kind of wrap up on this movie a bit, we talked about this revive the slasher genre, self-aware horror. I mean, all these things that we see in so many things today, and not just horror films, but I think other films as well. But and as you mentioned, there's a Scream 7 coming out. So why do you feel that Scream still feels fresh or draws people to this franchise?
I think because it's really a franchise for people who love movies,
Yeah.
because it definitely it rewards their knowledge of other movies, and oh, I get that reference. I feel special because I understand what that joke is about.
Yeah, if
Or
if Randy lived, if he was still alive today, he would definitely have a podcast.
yeah, he would absolutely he would have a podcast. Oh man, that's oh god, R.I.P. That would have been a great character evolution
Oh,
for him.
perfect name for it. Rules by Randy. Like,
Rules by
uh,
Randy.
yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. That's great. Yeah, I think because I think because the genre itself, is, like is ever evolving. It changes form, and we've gotten into what you would call more prestige horror. Like your The Substance, or your The
Oh,
Babadook,
yeah.
or like more social awareness horror, like Get Out, or
Mhm.
things like that, or even Sinners to a certain degree.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's like, it's changing constantly. So there's always something to have a discussion about, or to dig into. And so I feel like that's why these can continue to endure, even if the central characters slowly die off or wither away or move away from the franchise. I think you could do this with a new generation of young actors and continue to use the same formula, and continue to have a fresh conversation about whatever's happening in the genre at that particular time in history. And so I think that's one reason why it continues.
Yeah. I should have prepped you before asking you this, but I know you've talked about it on another podcast, but uh for you, is this one out of all six that exist right now? Is this the top of the list of the franchise? Is there another Scream that tops it?
I tell people all the time that Scream 1 is objectively the best movie in the franchise. I mean, it's set the foundation. We wouldn't have any of the other ones without this. The things that we like about the other ones are kind of what was established in this one. But my favorite one is actually the sequel, the second movie,
Okay.
by a nose hair. And that's blasphemous in the Scream fandom space. I've been in those rooms where I've been grilled for saying that. It's not a popular statement. But I like it because, um, I mean, it also has a very unique opening, and one that's very different from the one that we have here, and it's in a movie theater. And they also integrated African American characters into that one, and it's kind of the first talking point is that African American characters don't survive these movies, and the opening scene involves two African American characters who do not. And so that tongue in cheek play on that kind of thing, because if you watch Scream now, like there's essentially no African American
Yeah,
characters
this is a
in the
very
title.
white movie.
Exactly. So I found that maybe that is also like a more personal element of it that kind of
Yeah.
made it a little bit more relatable for me personally. I also just really love the college setting in Scream 2, and there's like 4 or 5 all-timer like set pieces in that one that I think for the entire franchise. So even though 1 I'd say is technically better, 2 is my like guilty favorite, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh yeah, no, of course. Yeah, this conversation just makes me want to throw that one in because even as you're talking, I'm like, I'm starting to remember a lot of the actors and characters in that movie for sure. So, well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for talking about this. I don't know if I'll lose you for any future podcasts because I just I probably ruined it by just picking your favorite
Favorite
film.
film?
But for people who aren't familiar with your work, like where can they find you or follow you? And you're working on a film project right now.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can follow I mean, I write little bite-sized reviews on Letterbox, and the handle is black underscore cinna underscore man. I also am a co-podcast host for the cinematropolis.com. That's our film review podcast with my good friend Caleb Masters. And then yes, if you follow me on any of my social medias, um all of which are under my name except Instagram, which is Black Movie Magic OKC is the handle for that one. You'll find updates about all the things I'm doing in film, all the podcasts that we are recording, and any film reviews that we do, and yes, any future projects that I'm working on. Like as of this year, I will be directing my second feature film, hopefully in October. Raised the funding for that, and super excited to make my first genre film, which is horror adjacent. So very excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, check out all the things. Yeah, on the podcast, we I was able to be a guest and had a lot of fun. We reviewed Thunderbolts. I was a little intimidated to be in the room because the comic knowledge that existed with the three of you outweighed mine. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, the best thing about podcasts is, I mean. You guys are reviewing the the newer movies that come out. And so, yeah, definitely follow that and listen and yeah, follow all of Laron's great work. So, as always, follow our podcast. I've been posting a lot of stuff on Substack at Movies Are Life. And then also leave a review if you're enjoying this series. Also, let us know what your favorite Scream movie is and what's your favorite scenes or quotes from this movie. Thanks again, Laron. It was great talking to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Yeah, thanks for listening and pressing play on the past.